The views and opinions of this program are those of the host, guests, and callers. There is substantial risk of loss in trading futures and options, which you should carefully consider prior to trading. Today's episode of Market Talk is brought to you by Growmark FS. Keeping up with the latest in ag is a challenge, to say the least, but there are experts nearby ready to help. You'll find them at your local FS. You can trust them to bring you customized agronomic, grain, and energy solutions born of the latest thinking. That's because FS specialists receive continuous training that keeps them current on the latest trends, practices, and technologies. So you'll get local expertise that's both exceptional and up to date. Visit fssystem.com to learn how FS is bringing you what's next. A mixed day in the market trade on Thursday, mostly lower again in corn and wheat, soybeans, oilseeds. Tried to find a little premium, mixed action in livestock, crude oil back rallying up around 1 to 2% on the day again. We have plenty to discuss. Let's talk about it. Joining us now, our good friend Bryan Doherty, Senior Market Advisor at Total Farm Marketing, our guest analyst here today. Bryan, good to have you back on the show, and we were just chatting real quick before we went on the air. It's been a rough couple of days in this market trade. A little quieter Thursday, but still, it's been a tough one to watch here, Bryan.
It has been. It's just a really tough scenario right now when you look at kind of big picture things, and you've got all this uncertainty. Yeah, if you look at the drought maps, they've certainly shrunk. But in theory, about 50 or 55% of the crop's still in drought. It's still considered the second worst rated crop since 2012. But this week, you got a couple private estimates between FC Stone and Informa, keeping the yield right up there, 177 for Stone and 176 for Informa. I don't know if they're trying to outguess what the USDA is going to say, or if that what they really feel the yield is. But all that goes by the wayside in August as we start to see more field type surveys, and then the USDA changes over to more of the NAS, the satellite imagery, the field surveys, boots in the ground, and then plot surveys. So we'll get some better perspective. Admittedly, if you're bearish, between the last week at this time and this week, you not only got the rain you wanted for most of a lot of the Midwest, you also got the forecast that you wanted beyond that rain. So it wasn't a one and done. It's looking like this whole pattern has done a 180 from June, which was tough. And in August, it looks like cooler than normal, or normal to normal, or normal to cooler. And precipitation is forecast to be normal to above normal. So pretty good forecast.
Yeah, to be devil's advocate here in this grain market a little bit, Bryan, I'm hearing from various producers of some crop issues out across the Corn Belt. We had all that hot and dry weather, and a lot of folks are worried about having the bushels out in their field here. And to your point, we're going to start to have more of those crop tours. I think some of the digital tours. I know DTN's digital yield tour is next week. Plus, then we'll get the boots on the ground perspective as well here. So one has to wonder if, some of these issues we're hearing from farmers, various farmers throughout the Corn Belt, if we start to see them pop up more, could that be a reason to give us another rally in these grain markets, Bryan? One has to wonder.
Yeah, it's really interesting because twice now we've had a rally that have been fairly steep on weather related, and then it just disappears fast. And it seems like the market is more focused on a big crop, Brazil's big crop, China's economy. And yet when you kind of step back, you scratch your head. To your point, as you talk to producers, I just don't get this warm and fuzzy feeling that when we add corn acres, we'll have an all-time high record yield. That just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Now, maybe farmers have been, just because they've been so sort of challenged with weather, are, kind of saying the worst and hoping the best. And maybe there's a little better crop out there than most are kind of thinking. But boy, last week's heat, if you didn't have rain, or if you even did, that probably took a little bit off of the crop. The rain probably put some back in, but I don't think the crop is getting bigger. It's just holding from wherever it was 2 weeks ago. And a lot of private estimates then we're talking 170 to 173. So we'll see what if these other analytical firms, if they hold any weight there. But it's kind of an interesting development too in the energy market, where you're up almost 20% in a little over a month. And at what point that at some point has some impact, I would think, on other commodities. Typically, if the energies are starting to move, the others seem to follow, and it's just been the
Mhm.
opposite here.
Yeah, with crude up again 2% on the day Thursday, back up around $82 a barrel. I'm with you. It's surprising that that's not spilling over more to the grains, but I know we've had a dollar rally as well. So is maybe the dollar rally here the last few sessions, Brian, is that maybe outweighing the energies, so to speak, and putting a lid on grains possibly?
It's something's outweighing. I mean, I get the forecast, and I get the idea that this thought process that, boy, rough June was rough, July was mixed to rough, and all of a sudden August is going to be ideal. I get that kind of view, but the dollar, the war in Ukraine doesn't seem to add any premium.
Mhm.
Even last week we talked about this. That I think when we were down on Tuesday last week, that we were down. They said, well, the articles were saying because there weren't additional attacks. I didn't know that was bearish, but it was viewed as bearish that Russia didn't attack more. Well, they attacked this week. Corn popped up for the morning session and then went negative. Extremely disappointing. So I don't think this is a farmer-led cash sell. Fires, get rid of all the stuff, hedge. I just think this is more speculative in nature. As the market proceeds, bigger crops, gets really defensive. I don't know if it'll have anything to do with the final yield estimate yet or not.
Well, to your point there, it doesn't feel like a lot of farmers selling. I know I've heard there is a little disappointment from some farmers who have not taken advantage of this last rally, and now they're staring at, December corn sub $5 again, November beans getting back down around 13, some price levels that we were at before. But thinking about it, Brian, we've had what, 2, 3 rallies here where we've done this and we've gone back down to these levels and then we rally off of it again. We haven't really broken below these levels in the market, Brian.
Yeah, there's a couple ways to look at things. Everything's relative, right? So I can look at where corn is priced today at on December corn at 493, and I can look back and say, well, on May 18th we're at 493 quarters. We're still above that level, so the corn market must be holding. Well, we've had 2 rallies in between and one little valley, 481. And so you could look and say, well, mid-July we were at 481, and here we're still holding above that level. So to your point, is the market trying to find some sort of footing down here? The only problem that I have with that mindset is that those who are short now can, I think, more rapidly and easily add on to short positions, not fearing that weather is going to be an issue. We're getting late for dry weather, for weather scare in the market. The next thing would be, could there be a frost or something? But we haven't seen any
Mhm.
really early killing frost. I wouldn't even, we don't even talk about it hardly anymore. But it's always something that could happen. But in the age of global climate change or global warming or whatever you want to call it, uh, our falls have been extended. We've had beautiful falls, so that would be a shocker. But I don't know what else the market needs to look at. There's always things out there that change, but right now it's been kind of this consistent pattern of a growing Brazilian crop, a consistently poor economic report out of China,
Mhm.
lack of exports, volatility with our weather and the market, then taking this week weather premium back out.
Brian, exports, you mentioned that as well. Weekly export sales, okay. Again, I know China's been stepping back into this market to buy new crop soybeans, but
Hmm.
still they're stepping back into the market is leaves a little bit to be desired, I would say, Brian.
It's not robust. And I don't want to say it's token, but it's in addition to buying Brazilian beans, and it's sourcing it here. And the Gulf price for U.S. beans is now competitive. It looks like with Brazil, or maybe a little better. But I always still, I don't know enough to know if they're real close. Yeah, which one is a better destination as far as actual logistics? Which one they'd rather move out of? The point of it, though, is that China's a buyer. They'll continue to buy. The world's not going to not use products, but they haven't chased. They've been pretty resilient when corn has shown some signs of life. And we haven't seen the export market run right along with those rallies. In fact, it just has stayed low. So it reminds me of a few other years where where it seems like importing countries are just hand them out. They're going to stay that way. And if they have to pay higher, they will, but they're not going to buy a bunch in advance or not going to buy it cheap, which could be a mistake here if we get some footing, because now we're getting back down to the cost of production or less, and farmer selling will likely remain light for some time.
We're talking today with Bryan Doherty from Total Farm Marketing. Bryan, a few more things want to run by you real quick. Livestock trade, a decent day in cattle on Thursday. I know we've been watching to see if we can get some cash activity to develop here this week. What's your take on the cattle market here today?
Yeah, so we got the board up today, especially the back month. So that's looking encouraging again. Good solid close above 190 for April, best in I think 7 sessions. So got some strength working there as we look, out into cash country. No real sign of what I'm going to call a slowdown. The demand, to me, it kind of defies things, but it's still there. We're still continuing to see excellent anticipation of not only good demand through, or I should say, in front of Labor Day. So I think that's what we're starting to see is that Labor Day buying on the retail sector there. But you got to be impressed on the bigger picture overall. Still over $300, $302 on Choice Cuts this morning. Spread $22 on Choice Select. It seems like we're leveling off, but it's not like we have a spike high and the market's moving down. What does still loom large, though, and I want to bring attention to this, is the day that the futures markets peaked on most contracts was on the 20th of July. That was a big reversal day. That high still holds. So I like the markets holding. I like that we tried to come back a little bit, a good close today. But if we don't at some point soon take that high out and start back down, that's going to again loom very large as a long-term sell signal. So my message to producers is, look, you've got some handwriting on the wall. It may mean something, it may mean nothing, but it's probably worth looking at put options to put a floor in the market.
Hog trade, a little bit of pressure there on Thursday. Looks like the product market weakening a bit. Any thoughts at hogs? And then also any thoughts on the dairy market as well, Bryan?
Well, thoughts on hogs, erratic, let's put it that way. And all of a sudden the index price is now trading well above futures. But the August contract is probably, I'm going to say, close enough to the index at this point. You've got a 105-ish area index in August around 101, but I was surprised it was down today. So the anticipation there is weaker cash, which takes me back to cattle. That might bleed into cattle as well. So I think I'm going to stick with our bias there that expect choppiness. I think those deferred months, October, December, even February, well undervalued. I expect demand to be strong at those prices and long-term buying to surface. I'll finish up with milk. Again, big run last week. Limit higher on Monday last week. Strong looking market, strong cheese trade, same thing. You get a run and it just runs out of gas. Lower again today, 15 to 22 lower, taking back a big chunk of last week gains. Still some 18s in front of deferred months, but a very disappointing reaction to a bull run. And that's actually a couple weeks ago. And just, we can't get the footing there. I said last week, it was a couple weeks ago. We can't get the market trying to rally back, can't get the footing. I don't think it's economic conditions anymore. We're not looking all of a sudden like we're going to head toward a recession. So we'll see. But I just don't know if it's just the timing. Usually we don't see our peak demand in midsummer. That starts coming actually in more toward fall as long-term buying for cheese and holidays and Super Bowl and all that starts to roll in. We're a little ahead of that right now.
Bryan, great thoughts as always. And I know if folks want to reach out to you there at Total Farm Marketing and get some advice on their marketing plan, a lot of great ways to get in touch, isn't there, Bryan?
There are 3 ways. Easiest is a phone call, 800-334-9779. Always welcome emails, Bryan with a Y at totalfarmmarketing.com or our website, totalfarmmarketing.com. 3 easy ways to get a hold of us. Throw us your questions or concerns, your constructive criticism, and let us know what we can do.
Bryan, I always appreciate the time. I know you got a busy day. I know you got to run. Thanks for joining us here once again this week, and have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week, Bryan.
My pleasure. Thank you much.
Bryan Doherty with Total Farm Marketing. That's going to do it for Market Talk here today. Find us online, markettalkag.com. I'm Jesse Allen. Have a great afternoon.